We've been rather busy in your absence.
Their first game nearly failed.
Nothing will go wrong.
A year before we shipped Half-Life 1, people in the company looked at what we had and said, this isn't good enough.
We made some pretty big mistakes.
And their second was stolen right out of their own offices.
At the time, it was shocking.
That was a dark day for us at Valve.
I had people in the company coming to me and saying, you know, are we going to go out of business?
But they took the world of gaming to the next level.
It's just amazing now that what we can do. It was more than just a video game.
It's more and more possible for more people to look at games as not just entertainment, but an art form.
This is the amazing story of Valve and Half-Life.
Wake up and smell the ashes.
In 1996, a software developer at Microsoft named Gabe Newell is struck with a new idea.
I got to know the guys at id, and the more I thought about what they were doing and the successes they were having with their distribution models as well as their technology, the more it seemed to me that that would be a lot more fun than working on operating systems.
Gabe isn't the only person at Microsoft thinking about getting into gaming.
Mike Harrington and myself met while we were working at Microsoft. We were both working in the operating systems group. We both worked with a guy named Michael Abrash, who's pretty famous as a game writer, and who also went over to id. Mike and I started thinking about possibly starting a game company.
In 1996, Gabe Newell and Mike Harrington leave Microsoft to form Valve Software in Kirkland, Washington.
Valve was really all about controlling the flow of an entertaining experience, having your hand on that knob, deciding when to turn it up, turn it down. That was a compelling metaphor.
We signed the LLC agreement the same day that I got married. I was standing there all dressed up to go off and do my wedding vows, and Mike is frantically shoving papers under my pen so that we can get that taken care of. It certainly makes it easier to remember the company's anniversary and my wedding anniversary since they're on the same day.
It was a novice game company, and guys from Microsoft, you work with games and work with software, but not put together a game project.
Michael Abrash was one of the first people we contacted and said, you know, can you give us advice? Michael Abrash was like, rather than going off and doing your own engine, you should come down to Texas and see what John Carmack and he were working on.
Mike and Gabe and a couple other people went down to Texas. They had the code on a CD on the plane on the way home. They were just convinced this was the way to go.
Valve has an engine. Now they need to figure out what to do with it.
We were originally working on two projects simultaneously.
One was a first-person action game.
The other one was Prospero, which is a very different game. It was much more of a fantasy epic.
That when we had played Doom, there seemed to be sort of two directions. One was this sense of very fast-paced, sort of a blaster, being in a shooting gallery. But Mike and I weren't as good as a lot of the people playing, so our sense of Doom was much more like, this is a really scary place, this is a very dangerous place. We're not in a shooting gallery, we're a target in a shooting gallery. And it was that sense of being in this world that we thought was really interesting.
Valve ultimately decides to do a first-person shooter called Half-Life.
Good morning, and welcome to the Black Mesa Transit System.
Half-Life 1 started with something which was sort of revolutionary at the time, which was we started you off in an ordinary day at work with no weapons and no sense of peril. You were just a scientist named Gordon Freeman.
Morning, Mr. Freeman. Looks like you're running late.
It was showing up for a day at work at the Black Mesa research facilities.
You're supposed to be in the test chamber under analysis procedures today, Gordon.
You started the day involved in an experiment that went badly wrong.
Oh, hell literally broke loose. A all of a sudden, from mild-mannered scientist, you become a crowbar-wielding savior of the universe. It's a perfect sort of story setup for what then becomes a fight for survival.
Really, it was just the momentum of Half-Life that caused the production of Prospero to stop.
It's not long before Valve realizes the pieces of Half-Life aren't fitting together.
About a year before we shipped Half-Life 1, people in the company looked at what we had and said, this isn't good enough.
We looked at what we had accomplished so far and realized that we'd made some pretty big mistakes in terms of how we were going to achieve these effects. So we seemed to, at that point, be at a juncture.
The team must decide to either ship the game as it is or to throw out everything and start fresh.
Oh my God!